I don't see anybody else here who's supposed to be in charge, so we're going to, since it's past the 7 o'clock mark, we're going to go ahead and start. And so let's start with singing one hymn, 373, and are you going to volunteer to play the piano, or maybe Rhoda will play the piano, or 373, Seeking the Lost. Thank you. Thank you for coming this evening.
Seeking the lost and pointing to Jesus, souls that are weak and hearts that are sore, leading them forth in ways of salvation, showing the path to life evermore, going afar upon the mountain, would I go on missions of mercy, following Christ from day unto day, cheering the faint and raising the fallen, pointing the lost to Jesus the way, going afar upon the mountain, bringing the wanderers back again into the fold of my Redeemer, Jesus the Lamb for sinners slain.
Thank you for singing. Let's bow our heads for prayer. Father, thank you so much for this beautiful Sabbath you've given to us. We thank you for giving us this time to especially meet with you, this time of rest, this time of meditation, this time of enjoying the creation that you have made for us, this time for enjoying family, and especially enjoying your presence with us. So this evening we invite you, as you have promised, to meet with us as we listen to Jonathan and Melody and the report they're bringing to us. We pray that our minds will be expanded to see what you are doing in different parts of this world to hasten your coming. In Jesus' name, amen. So I didn't expect to have to be up here this evening at all. I thought someone else would be here, but just as a brief introduction, most of you have followed a little bit about what's going on in our family with Jonathan and Melody and the children. And how long have you been there? Like 14 or 15 years, Jonathan? 14 years. And then Melody came on the scene after he was there for not too long. And now you see the family that's grown from that. And we pray every day for Jonathan and Melody. And the work that they're doing over there in Chad. And this evening, they will be informing us of some of the new developments that have been going on there. And I invite each of you to be praying for them in their ministry. So with that, I'll turn it over to Jonathan.
Thank you. And good evening, everybody. I'm happy to see so many people out here this evening. A lot of friends from way back. I'm not quite old enough to go way back, but anyway, I see a lot of friends, and thank you, each one of you, for coming out this evening. We've been looking forward to sharing the work that we've been doing over there with you. I say the work we've been doing, the work that God has been doing through us, and we want to give Him the glory for what we've been doing. Before I get started, I'll mention a little bit about what's on the table up here, and later on, when we're done, you can come up and look at some of the things that we brought from Chad. I'll be mentioning a few things during our presentation, so I won't talk about everything now, but we brought a few things. For example, there's a few pieces of money here from Chad. There's some artifacts, some bowls, some different cloth and rope, and different types of things that have been made. If you're interested, come up and see at the end of the program some various things from Chad. This is pottery from a tribe that used to bury their people in clay jars, and I went to that village and I found pottery on the ground and I collected it, and so there's some up here you can look at. And these books also are available if you want to take some home. What I want to share with you today is going to be mostly about the publishing work that we've been doing, because that's our main focus, is the publishing work. Before we get to the publishing work, I want to share a few. It'll be kind of like a little bit random, but just to give you a little taste of what it's like to be in Chad and what we do, because we do more than just publishing work. So I want to share with you just kind of a smattering of a few different activities that we've enjoyed, things that keep us busy. And then most of our time we'll be spending talking about the publishing work. So we'll go ahead and get started. Desert Tree Ministry is a ministry that we started, my wife and I started in 2013. Many of you know I went over there as a pilot mechanic, met her. We got married in 2010 and I worked as a pilot mechanic for several years. And then in 2013, we formed our ministry under Outpost Centers International, and we've been with them now since then. We've been supporting the work of the Seventh-day Adventist Church in Chad. That's where we started, but our work has been expanding beyond the borders of Chad now to Cameroon and Gabon and other countries in our union. And God has been blessing. So, like I said, most of what we do is publishing, but we also do some layman training. So we train lay members to do evangelism, how to study the Bible, and how to share that with others. We also work with audio players. We have these little solar-powered audio players that we can share the audio scriptures and various other materials with people who are largely illiterate. Many people do not know how to read, and so the audio is key. It's the only way that many people have to hear the scriptures. So that gives you a little overview of what we're doing. And to give you a little bit of context to what it's like to live there, this is a very common household in our village. This is actually a picture taken from Barrie, I believe. On the right is the kind of a half wall. That's their shower/bathroom area. It has half walls because they didn't want to take the time to finish it. So that's very common. They'll have little half walls to give a little bit of privacy. And behind that is the house where they stay in. So it's a little mud brick thing with thatch. Moving on, toward the left is some firewood. You can see a couple pots up there on top with some, what do you call it, different foods that they store. And on the left there is a granary. It's a clay structure that's surrounded with a grass mat they've woven, and that's where they store their grains to try to keep the animals and stuff out. Very, very much just natural materials. A few people have enough money to put tin on their roofs, but largely this is what you see in our village. Brick houses with thatch roofs. That's the local delivery truck. 2 cows usually and a cart with wheels. This is along the main road between the hospital in Barrie and the next village. Very common to see these carts, and often we get deliveries of construction materials or whatever at our house with this type of setup. The women are very strong, and they have these huge loads they carry to and from market on their heads. That's the commonplace. And actually, if you think about it, if you're going to carry a really heavy load, if you're out here, you're not balanced. You're going to be curved over. But if you put it here, you can put it straight in line, and it's actually a more efficient way to carry heavier loads. Firewood is what they cook with. Think about having to, if you want to cook, then you got to get the firewood yourself with your axe, and you bring it home and then chop it up and light a fire, and think about how complicated that would make cooking. If you get tired of cooking now, think about what it would be like to cook in an environment like that. This is often what public transport looks like. We do ride the buses sometimes, but we try to avoid it whenever possible. It's not necessarily the safest thing to do. It gets very hot there, as many of you know that have been following us. There's a period of time, about 3 months of the year, where there's about, it gets to above 105 or so every day without exception for about 3 months. So it's quite warm for a while. It cools down when the rains come, and during the coolest part of the year, it'll be about 60 degrees in the evening. It'll warm up to the 80s and 90s during the day, so it never really gets cold there. But there's a lot of beauty if you know where to look and when to look. These pink flowers, they come out during the driest part of the year. And that just gives you a little flavor of what it's like to live there in that region. We have a fairly small team, and I want to say I'm doing most of the talking this evening, but we are a team. Me and my wife, she does a lot of work at the home. She's homeschooling the kids and cooks, and if it wasn't for her, I wouldn't be able to have the time for me to do the more public work. So she has a ministry at home, and I have a ministry that's more out of the home, but we're a team that works together, and I appreciate the support of my family in this work. We also have other people. This lady in the middle, she's working on translation. Her name is Perron. She's been with us for close to 2 years now. She knows really good French, and she's become very valuable to us for our translating process, translating and editing. A lot of stuff that we did early on, I did a lot of the translation, and it wasn't very good, and I had somebody help me, and I was trying to do editing, but my French is not that great, and so the quality of materials was not very good. But now she's going through everything that we've done, everything we've produced in the past, and editing it and getting it up to a better standard. In the middle is Benny. You'll hear more about him soon. And Thierry, he actually, I want to congratulate him soon, because he just sent me a picture of a big pile of Sabbath school quarterlies that he printed for next quarter, and he did it all without even calling me for help. So it's a very happy time for me to see that all this training and time spent with him has paid off. Apparently he was able to do the whole project. He had some printed and ready to go. I saw on Facebook, so I need to call him and congratulate him. So these are tracts that we're holding. We like to we print a lot of different tracts, and we have some of these up here. If you want to see samples come up later, we have a little 2-color press, and we print in single color as well. Sometimes we'll go out as a team, and we'll say, okay, today we're going to quit work early, or we're going to take a day off, and we're going to go out in the neighborhood, and we're going to visit. And so we take piles of tracts, and we distribute tracts, and the kids have a lot of fun doing that. So we are still working on building, doing construction. If any of you would enjoy doing some construction, feel free to talk to me later. We're currently building this house. It needs a roof, some welding still for the roof, and everything finished work on the inside. And we're going to be building another staff house after that. We want to have room for not just us, but other people that may come in the future to help with the project. So we're still doing a lot of construction. We're going to be building a water tower to hold water. We'll be installing a irrigation system soon. We've planted some fruit trees, and we need to find a way to irrigate those to keep them living. Anyway, so we're doing a lot of construction, and also I mentioned training. We're not doing a lot of trainings, but we did do a pastoral convention for the whole country. This is a picture of all the pastors in the country of Chad. And we were able to have a 1-week training in collaboration with the Chad Mission. And the president of the mission is there, and the secretary, the treasurer, and then the pastors. And the packages there are Spirit of Prophecy books, some of which I have here. You can look at later. These are French Spirit of Prophecy books. Some of these are published, as far as I know, for the first time ever. You know, they've been translated, but not published in a printed way that's accessible to really anybody. And so a lot of these books have been printed and distributed. And before you could say, okay, maybe there's a lack of revival or lack of activity in the church because maybe I could say because of ignorance. They don't have all the materials, all the resources that we have in English. But now we can say they don't have as much of an excuse because they each got more than 20 different Spirit of Prophecy books. So we're very excited to be able to do that project, and we're praying that they will read the books and that there will be a revival in Chad and the surrounding countries. These have been distributed in all the countries. All the pastors in our union got a copy of these books. So, yes. Yes. So these are in French. If you pick it up, unless you understand French, you won't understand much. But those of you who understand French might enjoy looking at a few of these. So. They're translated, they're available on the website, but they're not printed in paper form. And the publishing houses are not printing Spirit of Prophecy books anymore, as a general rule, yeah. So I tried, that's a whole other story that I'm not going to get into all now, but I tried printing through the publishing house in France, and they basically said, sorry, we don't print those anymore. So I tried. It took us about 2 years to get permission to get these printed. That's a long story, but the Lord worked it out. He opened up the doors. We had to go through all the channels, Melody State and the mission and the union and the division, and finally we got the permission, and we're able to print about 70,000 of these books, a container full, a 20-foot container brim full of Spirit of Prophecy books. So we're still working on distributing those. You'll see a picture of that toward the end of our presentation, but yeah. This is just a picture of us distributing food. There's a lot of poverty, a lot of need. There's no way that we can feed everybody that's hungry all the time. We try to do a little bit. We try to get a few $100s worth of food at a time. We've started kind of a community service center at the church, and church members are managing distribution of food, sometimes clothing, to those who are blind or widows or orphans, basically people that are really greatly in need. So I wanted to share with you a little taste of life. You saw some pictures of what it's like in the environment. You saw some of the other activities that we do that keeps us busy. There's a lot of different things we've been doing. But for the rest of the time, I want to focus primarily on the publishing side of things. Now, for those of you who were here when we first arrived in the States, I was able to give a study for the sermon time here one Sabbath, And I talked about this principle, so I'm not going to spend a long time on this principle. I will just briefly mention it here. The idea of God's multiplication. We see it in the Old Testament, we see it in the New Testament. For example, the man who had 20 loaves of bread he brought during a time of famine, he gave to the prophet, and the prophet gave to a servant and said, give these to the people. There were about 100 men who were in the school of the prophets, and they needed food. It was God's way of providing food for the men. But the servant questioned and said, what is this 20 loaves? Is that enough to feed everybody? And Elisha repeated his command. Basically said, no, give these to the people, they will eat. God has said that they will eat and there will be some left over. So they gave the bread to the people, and sure enough, they ate and they had some left over. We're familiar with the story in the New Testament. The boy with the 5 barley loaves and 2 fishes. Same kind of a story. He gave what he had to the Lord, and not only did he receive more blessings, he had plenty to eat, but the whole crowd got fed. And so God has a different way of multiplying than we do sometimes. And we've tested God over and over and over on this principle, and this is one of the principles that we use in our ministry to move forward. God asks, what do you have in your hand? He doesn't always say, do this big thing for me. He says, what do you have right now, today, in your hand? And what are you going to do with that? So today, what do I have? I might not have very much, but that little bit, if I give it to the Lord, if it's a talent, if it's time, if it's a skill, if it's whatever it is that God has given us, we give that, surrender that to the Lord, and God knows how to multiply that beyond our imaginations. If we try to hoard it to ourselves, then we miss out on that blessing, and we miss out on blessing others. It's interesting to note that this principle was also followed in the early development of the Seventh-day Adventist Church. The publishing ministry began early on, and Ellen White was instructed to begin printing a little paper, sending it out to the people. Let it be small at first. Do what you can with what you have. I think they printed 1,000 copies that first time. Do what you can with what you have, but as people read, they will send you the means which to print, and it will be a success from the first. And from this small beginning, it was shown to me to be like streams of light that went clear around the world. I kind of wonder if she saw them going around Chad and some of the areas where we're working. I like to think that she did. Here is the country of Chad, and just to give you a little reason why we're doing publishing, just in the country of Chad alone, there's 120 different languages. And it's not like here in America where you have English and Spanish basically, and that's the big majority of everything. There you have Arabic and French as the main national languages, but then you have all these tribal languages. So lots of languages. In our entire union of Chad, Central African Republic, Congo, Gabon, and Equatorial Guinea, those 5 countries, there's no Adventist publishing house. And in fact, for our whole division, there is one publishing house that's functioning. There's another one that's still there, hasn't shut down yet, but hopefully it will be functioning again in the near future. It's getting some new equipment, and we hope that it will start. But basically, there's two publishing houses in the whole division, but none in our union yet. So there is a great need for publishing, and we believe a need for some sort of publishing capability in each country to provide literature for people. There simply is not literature available in most of these countries. Even if they want tracts to do evangelism with, if they go to their church or their pastor, it's not available. There's no ABCs to buy from. You go to the mission office. I want some tracts. Sorry, we don't have any. I want some Bible studies. Sorry, we don't have any. There simply is not printed material available. And so, by God's grace, we are working together with the church to get this rolling, to get more literature out there, and to encourage the church also to establish, we're going to be helping them establish printing, little print shops in each country. That's our goal. So with this principle of starting small, how did we start? We started with Bible studies under the mango tree or under the neem tree, whatever. Simple studies. It doesn't cost anything, really. But as people came more and more, they were asking questions, and I decided, okay, I'm going to buy a little printer. That's actually the model that we originally got, a little HP LaserJet printer. I started printing out little tracts. I'd print out a Bible study with just a list of verses, and I would chop it up into 8 pieces with scissors, and I'd give each person a little slip of paper, and that was the beginning of the printing ministry. From there, we started printing for our Bible training programs, evangelism programs. We wore out this printer so much that it wouldn't work anymore. It wouldn't grab paper. I had to feed it in by hand every time, and it just got to be old. So we bought a bigger printer. And eventually we moved into this 20-foot container. Some of you remember seeing this picture before. I've showed it before, and maybe last time we were here. Those are mattresses that I've installed in there to help keep in the cool. We had an air conditioner set up in there as well, and we tried to keep the cool in a little better to keep our printers from melting when they print because of the heat. But after about 4 years in there, it was getting to be kind of tiring to work in such cramped quarters, and God provided us the means, the capability to buy a piece of property. And there it is, 1.5 hectares. That's about a little between almost 4 acres, for those of you who know the acre system. Our print shop is that big building in the lower part, and we've been working on building that, and we finished that about a little over a year ago. A much bigger facility. There's some of the construction pictures. There's a picture of it finished. We got that finished in, I think, May of last year. We started moving equipment in and started using it. That was real exciting. I believe some of you were involved in packing this green container. I'm not sure how many of you here were involved in that, but I know my dad was the manager of that project and had some help from some of you. And he packed that thing jam-packed full of, I don't know, there was a joke made that if the raccoon somehow accidentally got packed in there, he would die very quickly because he would have no air to breathe because there's no airspace. So it was very well packed, full of equipment, and we were able to get that. We did have to do some repair work to the bridge. It was too narrow, and we didn't want that container falling into the water as it went over that little bridge, so we actually had to go and repair that bridge. So it was a bit of work here in the States and also receiving it there, but we got the equipment. There's the inside of the facility. And on the left is the 40-foot container that we've insulated and put up siding and a nice flooring. We can keep it clean, keep it mopped. We can control the dust. All of our equipment is installed in there, and all the printing equipment, that is. And we can shut that container up when a dust storm comes to protect it against dust. So that's one of the things that we've done to. We've set up a double protection system. We have several different containers within that building. That building protects us some, and then we can close up the individual containers. We run mostly on solar power, and that's important because there's been a diesel crisis even this year. It's not available sometimes. You can't get diesel, or it's very expensive, and so we've been able to run almost everything all the time on solar power. That's been a big blessing to have. Here's our 2-color press. Printing Sabbath school lessons. It's a lot faster than the other machines that we've been using in years past. We're very happy to have this machine. This is our little paper folder. Folding tracts, folding some of these little tracts like glow tracts here. In fact, I think that's folding that very tract there. This one, How to Avoid the Pit of Death. Gideon and Liliana are learning to use this machine, so they started helping us in the print shop. So this is a bookbinding machine. Put in the pages, it grinds off the corners, glues it, clamps on the cover. A much faster machine than we had before. It's still somewhat manual, but a good portion of it's automated, and so the quality is a lot better now with this new machine. And we're able to produce Sabbath School Quarterly. So that's Thierry you saw in the video, and this is a couple quarters back, but he's produced already the lessons for this quarter. We've been involved in a lot of translation work. Last time I was here, I mentioned this book, God's Answers to Man's Questions. We have it done in 6 or 7 different languages, and we're currently working on 4 or 5 more languages. It's basically questions and answers from the Bible, and it's very popular. People enjoy it, and it goes through covers all the major teachings of the church, and we've been working on translating that into a bunch of different languages. I already mentioned the Sabbath School Quarterlies. These are children's lessons. I have a copy here if you want to see. This is a little stapled booklet. That's 1/4 of Bible lessons for children based on the My Bible First lessons. And those have been translated to French and edited with Prone's help, and also with Gabriel's help. He's been helping us. And we started distributing those this year. We received a donation so that we're able to print quite a few, and we print about 1,000 at a time, and we send up 700 to the hospital. And so every kid who's sick that comes to the hospital gets a copy of this before they leave, at least while the copies last. Here's the tracts that I mentioned. You can see those later. I want to share with you now a story about this tract. I have 2 stories to share. Hopefully I can get through that before our time is up. This one is, I'll translate it as, "Can Somebody Steal My Soul?" That's what this tract is about. I think here in the States we don't really have much of an issue with people stealing each other's souls. At least I haven't heard about it a lot. But one night, Melody and I were getting ready to go to sleep. It was already dark. I think it was close to 9 o'clock in the evening. We got a knock at our door from another girl who was staying in the compound. She said, "Jonathan, Melody, there's a mob. They're shouting, they're knocking, they're pounding at the gate. What do we do?" "Well, what are they saying?" "They're calling your name, Jonathan." And this was just after the hospital had some issues. The doctor had been basically kidnapped, and the military had to come in and rescue her, and I'll spare that whole story. But anyway, we were wondering, why is there a mob at our door now? But they were calling my name, and I eventually decided to go out. So Melody came out as well, and I called Promise, who was there, and we kind of went out together to the gate and started talking with the people. "Well, okay, so what do you want? And what do you need?" They had brought this lady. She was on the ground. She was screaming. She was writhing around, shrieking, and then she would kind of go quiet after a while. "We want this lady to come in, and she needs to find her soul. She lost it, and it's behind your print shop over there. She needs her soul back." I told her she hasn't lost her soul. It's not over there. "Oh, yes, it is. You better let us in." "I'm not letting you in if you're going to look for a lost soul back there, because I know there's no lost soul." So we had this little argument at the gate, and told them, the Bible doesn't teach that, and they insisted. Well, in the meantime, every now and then the lady reaches up and makes eye contact with me and reaches up her hand, and she wants to grab me, and I reach out my hand and I hold her hand, and she's doesn't want to let go, and she's acting very strange, shrieking and talking with a funny voice. Promise decides to give a gospel message to this crowd. It's over 100 people that have come out. Remember, it's this dark, and they're kind of agitated, and they want to come in, but we're not letting them in. And Promise starts preaching to them, using Bible verses, and telling them the story of God's love for them, how Jesus died to save them, and how Jesus is powerful and can deliver us from the powers that control us. It was very interesting to see in that crowd, a lot of people were trying to talk as loud as they could to shut him down, to talk over him so that he could not be heard. Others were leaning forward, trying to hear every word that he was saying. He would turn to the lady, "Would you like to be freed? Would you like to be freed from this problem that you're having?" "No," she would say. Over and over again, he would ask her, "Would you like to be freed?" And then with time, as we kept praying and as he kept talking, she finally said yes. So then we brought her in to our gate, and we told the rest of the people, you have to stay out, but we let her sister in, a couple people, we let them in, and she was still acting strange and talking gibberish. We began to pray with her, and we prayed that Jesus would show his power. You see, the mob had been saying, your God can't heal her. There's no reason to pray. They were saying this out loud and mocking Promise, who was preaching the gospel message, and saying, you're basically silly because you're talking about Jesus, but who is Jesus to heal this lady? She needs to go and find her soul, and she needs to do this sacrifice and pay this money. And we felt that it was a key moment. Like, we can't let this pass without God doing something. And so we were praying earnestly. Promise began praying. I had a prayer. And the lady just kind of passed out on the ground, laid really still for a while. It kind of scared us because we thought, did she die? You know, she's still breathing, but she's not moving or responding or anything. And then after a little while, she sat up, speaking in her normal voice. She said, Jonathan, how did I get to your place? See, this lady had been to church a few times. She knew us. We'd helped her. She has basically no legs, and she walks around in her arms. She's a handicapped person, and she walks around in her arms and kind of drags her little legs behind her. Jonathan, how did I get here at your place? She was confused, but she was alert enough to know my name and where she was. She just didn't know how she had gotten there or what had been happening before. We kind of explained to her what had happened. She was confused about it, but we said, would you like to go home? Yes, I'd like to go home. So we put her in a little push cart, and as we were wheeling her out of the gate, the crowd of people was still there. And they said, you better not take her home. She's going to die. If she doesn't go and get her soul, she's going to die, and her blood will be on your hands. We said, don't you see? She's restored she's normal again. She's talking normal. God has healed her. No, and they were insisting that her blood would be on our hands, that she would die tonight. We said, no, she's not going to die tonight. God is with her. We took her home. It was over 1 kilometer. We were pushing her through the streets at night, and we had people following us just to observe what was going to happen. We took her to her house. We prayed with her, and we went back home. The next day, she was living, and you can believe me, the whole entire town was talking about this. Even the people on the other side of town, everybody was chatting about it. It was the talk at the market. Everybody was talking about this, what had happened. So what did we do? We believe that God directed us to write a little tract on the topic. Can somebody steal my soul? Everybody's interested on the topic, right? So strike it while it's hot. So Promise, he wrote this tract. We got it translated into French. We got it edited. We got it laid out, published, printed, folded, and within a week or so, we had this distributed. Quite a few copies we had distributed all around our neighborhood and in the village, and we saw people reading them. You can be sure people were interested to read. So that just shows you a little example why we're wanting to establish small publishing centers around different places. People say, well, there's already a big one or two in the division. Isn't that enough? Well, maybe it is enough if we're going to do a printing of 70,000 Spirit of Prophecy books somewhere. But for things like this, where we're going to publish something in a local language or to address an immediate need, if there's a publishing house in each country, then this type of thing can happen. Things can be written and published and distributed to address the needs as they arise. Flyers for evangelistic meetings, Bible studies, all these things can be produced in smaller quantities locally and distributed. And so that kind of illustrates why we're thinking of establishing these small publishing houses in other countries in addition to Chad. There's a sampling of those books that we printed. I said we printed. We had them printed in Poland at Springs of Life Foundation and had them delivered. We've also found that tracts have a place in the prison ministries. We've been sending somebody every week. Benny goes once a week to the prison in Lai, and there's, I think, about 200 prisoners that are there, and many of them come to these Bible studies. He gives Bible studies and distributes literature. One of these ladies you can see on the picture on the right, in the lower left there, it's a lady holding a small child. She's in jail because she killed her husband. In a fit of rage, she killed him, and she had the question, can God forgive me? I killed my husband. Can God forgive me? She didn't know. She felt so terrible, so bad about what she had done. But Benny was able to share with her the message of the gospel and how, yes, Jesus is there. He's a compassionate God. He's a God full of pardon, full of forgiveness, and he will forgive you if you ask. And so being able to share messages of hope, there's a number of Muslim people who are attending the Bible studies in prison. And I got a message from the director of the prison saying, please continue what you're doing. Keep sending your people. It's helping us. And every so often I hear people, I get a message saying, okay, 3 people, 5 people were released from prison. Thank you for the work that you're doing. We're able to release some of these people because they've changed their lives have turned around, and we're safe to release them back into the community. So it's a rewarding ministry that is ongoing. I forget which day it is now. I think it's on Wednesdays that he goes, or is it Tuesdays? I can't remember now. But I want to share one more story with you, where our time is beginning to run out here. It's a story about how small pieces of literature can have large effects. And I encourage you to not forget to pick up some literature and distribute it. Pick up these flyers about the Messiah's Mansion. We were just up at Paint Creek earlier today, and we met a couple in the parking lot, and our kids went in the van. They pulled out 2 flyers, and anyway, so it's easy to hand out tracts. A lot of times people will take them. The results can be amazing. We don't even know the results, but sometimes God gives us a little sneak preview of what a tract or what a book can do. So let me share with you this story. This originated at the hospital. Benny, we have been hiring to go to the hospital a couple times a week, 2 or 3 times a week, to do chaplaincy work there. So he prays with the patients, he distributes literature. He also runs our little book. We have a little bookstore there at the hospital where we lend books, we sell books, and we also distribute free literature at the hospital. It's a key point because people come from all over the country and even other countries to this hospital. So this particular man came with his father who was sick, and he received this book on the Sabbath. This is a book that I've written about the Sabbath, the question and answer book, and a Bible. So he got those 3 books. He did not own a Bible before that, but while he was waiting for his dad to regain his health at the hospital, it was a week or more of just sitting around by the bedside waiting for something to happen. So he was reading these books that Benny gave him. He studied every single page, every single verse in the Sabbath book. One by one, he opened his Bible up and read in the Bible and verified everything, and he was just delighted to be learning new truth that he hadn't seen before. When his dad got better, he returned home. Now he lives about 150 kilometers from us. And about a year went by, and then Benny starts getting phone calls from this guy. He said, can you come and visit me? I want you to come and visit, or can you send somebody to visit us? We need help. Well, what do you need help with? He said, well, I've been studying this book on the Sabbath with my friends. I have about 10 of them that are coming, and we're meeting on Sabbath, and we're studying. And they have questions, and I don't know what to say. I don't know how to answer them. Can you help? Well, that's a long ways from here, and 150 kilometers is a long ways by dirt road. Believe me, it takes a long time to get out there. So we didn't go for quite a while. We just said, we'll keep praying for you. We'll try to send somebody. And every time he called, he would raise the number. Okay, last time it was 10, now I have 15 people, now I have 20 people, now I have 30 people meeting. Finally, we sent a team. We sent 3 or 4 people out there with our vehicle, and we brought a whole bunch of literature. because we don't have a Bible worker to send out there right now. We don't have pastors to send out right now. Nobody extra. So the best we can do is bring in some more literature. So we said, take this literature. We spent several days with them. Last I knew, the last phone call we got from him, he said, please send us somebody. I have 60 people meeting at my house. Every Sabbath, we're meeting. And that's the last detail I know from this story. That's an ongoing story. Hopefully I'll know more details sometime. But we don't know what to do. Like, we don't have anybody to send them right now. So the best we can do is print more literature and send them, and the Holy Spirit is obviously working in the absence of anybody to send. God is working through the literature, through His Word, and people are learning the truth. This reminds me of a passage I found in the book Christian Service that I'd like to share with you. I've been shown that the publications already have been doing a work upon some minds in other countries and breaking down the walls of prejudice and superstition. I was shown men and women studying with intense interest papers and a few pages of tracts upon present truth. They would read the evidences so wonderful and new to them, and would open their Bibles with a deep and new interest as subjects of truth that had been dark to them were made plain, especially the light in regard to the Sabbath of the fourth commandment. As they searched the Scriptures to see if these things were so, a new light shone upon their understanding, for angels were hovering over them and impressing their minds with the truths contained in the publications they had been reading. I like to think about this as we distribute books and tracts. I like to think about those angels hovering around each person that has a tract, each person that has literature. Even though there aren't enough Bible workers or pastors to send around, the angels are there, hovering around each person. I just like that picture. I saw them reading, and this is continuing the same passage, Christian Service, page 150. I saw them holding papers and tracts in one hand, the Bible in the other, while their cheeks were wet with tears, bowing before God in earnest, humble prayer to be guided into all truth, the very thing He was doing for them before they called upon Him. And when the truth was received in their hearts and they saw the harmonious chain of truth, the Bible was to them a new book. They hugged it to their hearts with grateful joy, while their countenances were all aglow with happiness and holy joy. These were not satisfied with merely enjoying the light themselves, and they began to work for others. Some made great sacrifices for the truth's sake and to help those of the brethren who were in darkness. The way is thus preparing to do a great work in the distribution of tracts and papers in other languages. A little sampling from Christian Service, but I believe that we're seeing a fulfilling, at least in our little part of the world, a fulfilling of this. People receiving tracts and books and appreciating it, discovering truth, not only appreciating it, but sharing it with others, like this guy who got, so what did that cost? This book cost about $1. The other book cost about $2, and the Bible, whatever we paid for that. So you could say $5 or $6 of literature got into this guy's hand, but now there's 60 people meeting in his house. So again, it's an illustration to me of how God can take little things, we do what we can with what we have, and it becomes big things. Now just imagine 70,000 Spirit of Prophecy books. If we just gave 1 or 2 to this guy, imagine if we get 70,000 of these distributed, what the effects will be. We've received reports from as far as close to 2,000 kilometers from where we are. Somebody who came to the hospital, got a tract, went back home, read it, appreciated it, and called the number and like, can you send us more? We want more literature. We got this tract and we want more. Can you send us more? Can you send us somebody to help? So we have this big problem on our hands. We don't know what to do. God knows what to do, but we don't know what to do yet. As our literature gets out and people get it, there's a huge need now to send people out into the countryside to share. Something you can pray for God to send more workers, for Him to send the angels and the Holy Spirit in the meantime to work with the people. All right, as I close, I just want to share a little bit of our expansion plans. I mentioned it earlier on. I just came through Gabon on my way here about 2 months ago. I spent some time in Gabon, also in Cameroon. And there's an ASI, Center of Influence, there in Libreville, the capital of Gabon. And you can see that, the green building on the left. In the upper level, they have a place where they do cooking schools. They have a little library, lending library, bookstore. And they have a lot of our books there. You can see on the right some of the same books that you see up here. They're there and offered there. And I was able to eat some of the delicious food that they prepared. I had meetings with the church administration there. The union president, very gracious, welcomed me. And I had meetings with the Gabon mission there. And the current plan is now they are going to give us this small building. It's bigger than the 20-foot container that we started in Chad. They're going to give us this building. We'll clean out some of that stuff. It already has a tile floor and paint and a roof. We just have to add electricity and a few things. We're going to buy some machines, put them in there, and set up the first publishing house in Gabon. That will be at the Gabon mission. We're very excited about this. We're working on details, but maybe some of you have been following the news. Have you seen Gabon in the news recently? There was a coup that just happened there. The military just took over the country. This was last week. And so, I don't know what we're going to do yet. We were planning on going back to Gabon instead of to Chad for a time to set up the machines and get them installed. Those plans obviously are on hold right now, and so we're seeing where God leads. We do have options still. We can go back to Chad, obviously, for now, unless there's a coup there. But our plan now is to go back to Chad, and if and when Gabon reopens back up, we'll go there. But for now, the ports are closed, the borders are closed, and the country is, we'll see. We'll see what happens in the next few weeks. But I know that God is working there, and He's opened the doors. I believe that He will open the way for us to establish a publishing work there. Also in Cameroon, we will be establishing, I say we, but Promise, who worked with us for about 2 years, he's establishing a small publishing house for the English-speaking part of Cameroon, which happens to be a war-torn area. There's a lot of conflict going there. He's lost a lot of friends and family members in this conflict. He feels a very strong desire to reach his people before it's too late. Because any day there's conflict, he hears word of his uncle or his friend or this or that who died, and it's too late to reach them, but he wants to reach those that he can while there's still time. And so this is the project. We are helping to fund that because he doesn't have a lot of funding, but he worked for us for 2 years. He's a really good worker. He's very honest and very faithful and hardworking, very intelligent, smart. He will be establishing this. We're going to be sending him some equipment soon. We're really excited to be working with him in Cameroon. So in addition to Chad, we're going to be starting in Gabon, Lord willing, and in Cameroon, Lord willing. Hopefully by the end of the year, we'll have some of those, 2 of those places functioning. Many of you have been helping us in many different ways from the very beginning, from when we've gone over. We really appreciate that. And one of the things we want to say is thank you for all of those of you who have been helpful to us. If you're wondering how you can help, the biggest thing we need is people, more people to help. There's so much to do. We feel like we can never do half of what needs to be done. But we work with the strength that God gives us, and at night we have to sleep. And so, the next day we do what didn't get done yesterday, and we keep moving forward. God has provided help to us, and we know that He'll continue to provide help. But that's one of the biggest things that we need. You can see some of the funding projects to establish the publishing house in Gabon, in Cameroon. It's about $50,000 each. We've already raised some of the funding for that. But we're going to be putting together equipment as soon as possible and sending it over there, hopefully before we return to Africa. We'll get that sent, and then we'll follow the equipment and set it up. We're trying to get a water tower. Now that's an estimated price, $13,000. I'm not sure if it'll be more or less, but that's our estimate for now, and we're trying to settle on the exact plan, how to do it, what the materials will cost. But we have a nice well now, a deep well with clean water. That was from a contribution from the Greenville Church. It took a number of years to finally get it dug. And I'm sorry about that, but we didn't have our own property until recently. I didn't want to drill it on somebody else's property. And then when we did have our own property, I couldn't find a drilling rig, well drilling rig that could go as deep as we needed to get through that hard layer and get good water. One day, the guy that was working with me, he said, "Did you know that there's a well drilling rig that just drove by through here yesterday?" And he had already gone and talked to the manager of this well drilling rig and got his phone number. So I called him right up and said, "Can you please come and do a well before you leave the area?" He came, we negotiated, and he did the well right away. So we have a well now. We're going to be working on the water tower. We're continuing work with editing and layout, translation. Anyway, I appreciate all that has been done, and I know that God will provide. We don't get salaries. We don't get a lot of funding from other sources. It's people like you, churches, friends, that send in donations that enable us to keep working. For those of you that can't go, who don't have a lot of funding, we need prayer. And I put that last, but it's not because it's the least important. It's really, we need to keep in prayer all the time. We really appreciate all of those. I know many of you are praying very faithfully, and others of you are praying occasionally. I appreciate all the prayers that are sent to the Lord for our work there. And some of the specific things you can pray for us are wisdom, because we face so many things that we're not trained to do. We have to figure out what to do. And what do? I'm not trained to do this. But God shows us what to do. We need wisdom, courage, safety, faithfulness, efficiency, and of course, more workers. There's the contact information. I think most of you are familiar with this by now, but in case you aren't, there's how to get in touch with us. Now, we are members of Outpost Centers International, so if you want to send a donation, you can send it through them and just mark it at Desert Tree Ministry, and they will put it in our account. That's how that works. So don't write out checks to Desert Tree Ministry, but write them out to Outpost Centers International, and then we'll get that later. Now, we have some cards up here, some business cards, and if you're not on our newsletter sign-up sheet, we send out news reports. We have our last newsletter actually in a printed form. If you want to pick one of those up, feel free to do so. If you're not on our newsletter list and you want to be, it comes out every 2 months, or she's trying to get me to do it every month, but I don't always get that. But anyway, not too often. Feel free to take some of these things in the corner here. I guess that's about it. There's more that we could share, but we're out of time. It's 8 o'clock, and I know some of you need to go back. We need to get kids to bed, and I appreciate all of you coming out tonight, and all of your support, your prayers, your love, and thank you so much for giving us an opportunity to share what the Lord is doing. It's been exciting to see what He's done, and we're excited to see what He'll do in the future. So thanks again. I don't know if we want to take time for questions now, or if we want to close, and then you can come up with your questions later. I'm not sure what is best, since it's already about 8 o'clock. Should we take a few questions now?
Just want to mention that any offerings given to Desert Tree Ministry through our time envelopes here locally do get sent to Outpost Center International, to your organization, so that if they want to give through the church, they can just mark on the time envelope Desert Tree Ministry, and we channel all those directly through Outpost Centers to your ministry.
Okay, thank you. So just to repeat it, donations that come through the church, if you put in a tithe envelope, you can mark it Desert Tree Ministry, because the church then will send it through Outpost Centers. And we see those coming through every few months. You send those in. So, yes, thank you for the clarification. All right, maybe we should close with a prayer, and then if you have questions, feel free to come up, and that way those that need to leave can leave, and those that want to spend more time or have questions, feel free to come up and look at some of these things, and let's have a closing prayer. Our Father in heaven, thank you so much for what you have done in Chad and the surrounding areas, and for the opportunity to share this with our church family here in Greenville. Thank you for each person who's supported the ministry in various different ways, and we just ask that you will continue blessing each one of us in our ministry in Africa and also in the local ministry here as we prepare for the Messiah's Mansion and other outreaches that are going on here. Continue to give us the courage and the strength and the energy to continue until you come. We thank you that you're coming soon, We want to be ready when you come. We want lots of other people to be ready when you come. So help us to be a part of this great preparation for your soon return. And we thank you for being with us. Bless us each as we return to our homes this evening. In your name we pray. Amen.